everybody.
Spring is in full swing, and sports fans are likely spending their time looking at the odds of their favorite sports teams. Those of us who follow the agricultural markets are likely doing the same thing when it comes to these major product supplier mergers. Mergers have a big influence on today's world. Today, I will first discuss what these acquisitions are, then I will go into how they affect the U.S. and how we are coming full circle on the topic, and lastly, we will look into how they affect the family farms. But first, let's dive in and discuss what they are. 2017 went down in the history book as the year when many companies merged. According to a CropLife article accessed on March 24, 2018, quote, "Since the early 2000s, the crop protection industry globally has been dominated by 6 large players, or the so-called Big Six. The Big Six includes Monsanto, Bayer Crop Science, DuPont Crop Protection, BASF, Dow AgroSciences, and Syngenta. The 3 companies created through these mergers would then own over 70% of the global corn markets and over 80% of the global pesticides markets. Unfortunately, the bigger the company, the more they tend to prioritize investors over customers, leading to a demand in sales. Though these mergers could improve the company's growth and overall revenue, they will likely cause a major spike in the seed and chemical companies, leading to the average American farm to have to sell their land because they cannot pay their bills. Unfortunately, cornering the market in the agricultural industry is not the first time in the nation's history. The advent of the early oil and railroad tycoons led to antitrust laws being formed. So how is this any different than today, you ask? Well, a couple of years ago, the History Channel did a documentary called The Men Who Built America. In this documentary, they explained that over 100 years ago, the U.S. was basically controlled by 5 powerful men. According to the History Channel website, accessed on April 14, 2018, quote, "John D. Rockefeller, Cornelius Vanderbilt, Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, and J.P. Morgan created the American dream and were the engine of capitalism as they transformed everything they touched in building the oil, rail, steel, shipping, automobile, and finance industries," end quote. During William Howard's Taft term of presidency from 1909 to 1913, the 2 biggest monopolies in American history were broken, the Standard Oil Company and the American Tobacco Company. This caused antitrust laws to be formed. If today's mergers are allowed, we'll have come full circle and be back to only about 2 or 3 major suppliers in the agricultural, seed, and chemical industries. This will affect farmers and their livelihoods. Unfortunately, this is occurring not only in the United States, but on a more global scale in the emerging agricultural markets. So if the wealth is controlled by only a few powerful companies, how will this affect your average farmer and America's government? Large companies can influence Congress as well. Many fear that the fewer companies there are in a given sector, the more likely that those companies are to get their way. Regulators in the European Union, United States, and dozens of other countries will weigh in on whether or not to allow these mergers and acquisitions to go through. Even if some of the biggest countries say yes, important global players like Argentina, Brazil, or India could next one or more of these plans. A Wall Street Journal article states, quote, "Senator Charles Grassley, a Republican from Iowa and a chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, said, multi-billion-dollar deals between some of the agricultural sector's biggest players could reduce competition and lead to higher prices for farmers at a time when farm income is projected to hit its lowest levels in more than a decade. Without the help of senators like Grassley, farmers' votes and opinions won't matter when it comes to these mergers. We need somebody to be able to communicate to the public as well as major businesses to show them that if this happens, then almost all of the nation's farms will be out of business because they will not be able to pay the expenses or to be able to bear the brunt of the nation's exports. If we don't get help from senators and other agricultural impactors like Grassley, then local farms and seed companies and even sprayer co-ops would not be in business and forced to close down. Local companies such as Gangler Sheep Farms wouldn't be able to afford to have people rugging and detasseling for them, and other small farmers won't be able to have hired men. According to the Nebraska Department of Agriculture, accessed on March 24, 2018, quote, 1 in 4 Nebraskans are directly employed in the agricultural industry. If these mergers continue, Nebraskans will drastically be economically impacted. So let's be clear, we ask a lot of rural America. Farmers make large investments on their crops and their livestock, buildings, and equipment, and can face heavy losses due to natural disasters beyond their control. Our state has had its fair share of floods and storms, and even droughts in recent years, with hundreds of billions of dollars in total losses. This is not the fault of the companies, that farmers can lose money due to these natural circumstances beyond their control. At the same time, our consumers expect to have farm goods and products at a fair price. Our farmers and consumers are faced with enough challenges without adding the burden of the anti-competitive market. This anti-competitive market is also one of the main reasons that the companies want to merge. Consumers in these companies shouldn't be faced with the unnecessary and higher costs because of lack of competition. Also, farmers don't need the cost of seed and fertilizer going up either. It is our responsibility as consumers and to the farmers who produce our food to level the playing field. Listen, most Americans aren't farmers, I get that. But these major mergers will trigger astronomical changes in the food system and impact everyone, whether or not you buy seed, fertilizer, or herbicides. Today we discussed what these mergers and acquisitions are and what are in the works. Then we discussed how the U.S. can come full circle on this topic, and lastly we look into what these acquisitions have on the lives of farmers. We don't want history to repeat itself. We want to protect the interests of farmers, so join me in taking a stand and support your local farmers and co-ops today.